I was seeking freedom of time for me to be the healthiest version of myself, time for me to be with my children, time for me to be in my community, time for me to travel. And I have achieved that. I know I have a long ways to go and new things and, increased ideas coming through. But that's what I'm here to do, is to be that example of entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, where you can have it all without the exhaustion and the burnout.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of CEO Frequency. I am super excited because today we have a very special guest, Natalie Clark, who is a renowned speaker, energy practitioner, and quantum facilitator with a gift for catalyzing soul-led, high-achieving women to crack open their untapped potential. So she blends Eastern and Western modalities. She helps clients slash through eons of deep-rooted blocks and really raise their electromagnetic field to create infinite possibilities in their business and in their life. So I'm super excited to dive into all of these topics with her today. This is going to be a ton of fun. So Natalie, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Why don't you just tell us, who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Thank you, Allie. Great to be here. So I am on a journey. I started entrepreneurship later in life, although when I went to college, I chose business as a major because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I kind of went the longer path of working a beautiful career in higher education. But the whole time, my soul had this anchor of, you have to go out there and create your own thing. And so it took me some time, but boy, oh boy, when I decided to pull that trigger and say, I'm doing it, I want no regrets. And I just felt that my energy was ready for something bigger to create. So in about 2018, 19, 20, I jumped off what I call the cliff of walking away from the breadwinner salary, giving up retirement, giving up all the beautiful benefits. But I knew that I could create something so much more and so much more me. And so I did that, and I have 4 young children. And so I was the busy momhood, and I had to overcome a lot of the self-doubt and limitations. And can I do this? Because everywhere I looked, especially with female leaders, they were all burned out. They would say, entrepreneurship is great, but there was always the buts, the blood, sweat, and the tears, but you'll sacrifice. And, I juggled that for a little bit, and finally it came to me, Natalie, you're meant to go create that path. Like, you might not see people out there doing it, but you go create it, and then you will find the others that are out there doing the same thing. So when I began, I had zero expectations other than I was going to be successful. And I didn't realize it would come as quickly as it did, but I also realized there were certain things that I did along the path that I think made it easier for me than others, because when I looked around at my colleagues, I was doing things differently. And so hopefully I can share a little of that magic with everyone today as a source of inspiration. So here I am, probably 4 years into true entrepreneurship, and I can truly say that I'm in a place of ease and flow and money coming in and creativity and ideas. And you know what the best part is? I was seeking freedom of time for me to be the healthiest version of myself, time for me to be with my children, time for me to be in my community, time for me to travel. And I have achieved that. I know I have a long ways to go and new things and, increased ideas coming through. But that's what I'm here to do, is to be that example of entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, where you can have it all without the exhaustion and the burnout.
Wow. Really powerful story. And I think every one of our listeners can resonate with that, because we all have seasons of life and of business where sometimes things are harder, sometimes things are easier. Sometimes it feels like, the challenges never end. And what you've achieved in such a short period of time, just, 4 years, the success that you've created for yourself is very profound. And like you said, you didn't expect it to happen that quickly. So I'm curious, I can't help but ask, you mentioned that you did things differently, right? Like you did some things that you didn't see other people doing. So what were those for you? What were the game changers, you could say, or just the little details that set you apart and made your journey that much easier?
Yes. So I think I've always had the ability to follow through on what I commit to. But I think it's a whole different realm when you put yourself out there in entrepreneurship and, the risks involved or the perceived risks. But one of the things that was very near and dear to me as I was stepping forward is I valued my health. And I knew that my energy, how I felt, like my level of joy and zest and vitality would influence my business. And I knew that I could not be overwhelmed or frustrated or in scarcity mindset. I knew that I had to make some, what I call now, looking back, I have coined them my $1,000,000 decisions. Those key pivotal things that when I was faced with, do I or don't I? And what I look back and reflect on is that in 100% of the cases, I chose to jump off the cliff. And it kind of went against how I was raised, and it definitely went against a lot of the business school training that I had. But I'm like, I'm rewriting the business script. Like, we need to do it differently. And so my $1,000,000 decisions, a couple of them is I did invest in myself at a very heavy level, not like on necessarily a business front, because I did have a lot of business knowledge. I knew how to get my X's and O's and hire the bookkeeper and the CPA and get those key components. I knew I didn't have to do it all. I knew I had to outsource. I knew that for me to scale, my time is so valuable. So I knew that I needed to work in my genius, and I needed to either hire or find people in their genius and let them take those tasks. But with that, when there's nothing in the bank account, it sounds great until you're just like, well, how am I going to pay for these things? But I made a few, what I look back now and call my $1,000,000 decisions. And truly, it was investing in myself and investing in my own personal, what I call my win my morning routine, which changes every single day, quite honestly. And as I was going through what I call the blocks of entrepreneurship, which is simply when we step forward and put ourselves out there, everything from our ego steps forward to try to stop us because it thinks it's unsafe, right? The fears that we have. And I know it's not just coming from me, it's coming from the lineage behind us. There was a time women couldn't go out there and create businesses, they probably died in, just not too distant paths for trying to step into that leadership. So I realized some of these fears are just wired in us. And we're like, what am I so scared of? And when I started to say, I actually need to unravel a lot of this denser energy, the stuff that I'm carrying. And anytime I feel the fear, I need to get rid of that fear. And so I, have worked with lots of different energy modalities over the years. And so I would turn to my tools. But what really had the number one impact in my business was quite simply the movement of my body to remove the blocks that were holding me back. So when I felt blocked from creativity, I knew movements that would open the creativity. But the beauty is, it's not an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours on a yoga mat. It was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like micro doses of what I call somatic magic that I would turn to. And I started to just do it intuitively and naturally. Most people would look at it and say, oh, she's maybe doing yoga, or she's out for a power walk, or she's out for a slow jog. I turned to movement and silence as my number one drivers, because my intuition and where I go in the business, it came to me not when I was stressed, not when I was talking about how frustrated I was, not when I was in with colleagues. It came to me. I would always get that inspiration when I was in silence. But after I had done movement, after I had cleared whatever was in my body, and it became just this intuitive process. And about 2 years ago, I made a pivot in my business because I coach women on their lives and living their best lives and untapping that potential. And I started teaching this movement because I had so many of my colleagues and other entrepreneurs saying, what are you on, Natalie? I'm like, well, I'm not on anything. What's your magic? What's your secret? And I would just shrug it off. The first year I was like, well, I'm just doing my thing and I'm doing it my way. And I'm stepping forward. I show up every single day in the best version of myself. And I finally realized it was actually, I led a conscious leadership retreat in South Africa. And looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? And halfway across the globe and left my family behind for 10, 11 days. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had. But it was in that retreat in the Drakensberg Mountains of South Africa that I realized you need to go teach this. that's part of your mission, Natalie. It's like you need to add this into what you're already doing and help others for them to truly live their highest potential lives. This is such a secret, beautiful, powerful catalyst. And when I consider who I am and what I came here to be, I am that catalyst. I am that igniter. I want to just help people rise into their greatness. So that is one of my $1 million decisions, was self-investment and time spent on me so that I am the strongest version of myself. And then I must say, life just flows. Business just flows. People come knocking on my door without the efforting that, when you first start out. So, and you can do that in a short amount of time.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And it's beautiful to hear your story and what you personally experienced in the process of introducing these simple techniques. And I think what's powerful about it is that, like you said, it's not like hours and hours of inner
Right.
work. It's not like,
Right.
journaling for an hour every Sunday. It's
Right.
not like laying on your yoga mat for 3 hours. It's actually really simple, really
It is.
actionable stuff. And I'm
It
curious,
is.
like, when you say it takes, 5-10 minutes, what kind of stuff are you doing? Like, what are those little hacks, you could say, or habits that you
Yes.
introduce that, like, just turn the key in the lock, so to speak, and make it
Yes.
that much easier?
Yes. So a lot of my training, and I actually, when I reflect back, I've been like training for this my entire life. I was a dancer. I was an ice skater. I loved all sports. I love movement. I've always been into movement, and every single day, my entire life, I have to move my body. And a lot of people are wired like that. I find entrepreneurs, because they have so much creative energy, they're given like this triple dose of energy. And if we aren't moving it, it gets stuck and blocked, and we can feel that intense, like, oh, this is heavy. And so I think naturally I've just been doing that. And I've trained in yoga, and I've trained in Pilates and a lot of those things. So it's kind of a combination of about many different disciplines. And what I essentially work with is the energy that is contained inside of us. Okay. It's that explosive dynamite energy that unfortunately in our modern society is mostly locked down in nearly all people. And even people who are successful outwardly, they're still doing it and they're still running on empty. So what I'm talking about is this energy of a flow state, this energy of being in the zone. It is kind of a place where people, if they're not there, they look at you if you are there, and they almost get triggered by it to say, you don't live in the real world. Like, can't be that good. It's like so there can be a little bit of that projection by others. So I kind of just stayed in my little box, my Natalie box, did my thing. But what I actually do, so I've had training in breathwork and meditation and all the beautiful tips and tools. I've worked with athletes. I've covered the gamut in terms of the types of people I've worked with over the years. But I'll tell you what it is. I combine a lot of those things, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of mantra, a little bit of breath work, and body movements that may look like a little bit of Pilates, may look like a little bit of different forms of yoga. But what we're doing is we're opening up the energy system. We're opening up our electromagnetic field. So people who maybe struggle to hit and maintain revenue months, okay, so the highs and the lows, right? That is actually an imbalance in their energy system. And it is the movements and the breath and all of those things that will very efficiently move that energy out. So, like I said, if someone had a camera, they would see me on a yoga mat, and they would interpret it as, oh, I'm just doing some exercise, because what I do does count as exercise. It checks that box. But what I'm actually doing is energy work, and it's energy work for my business. It's energy work for my clients that I serve. It's energy work for my health. It's energy work for my life. So instead of like separating life and business, all of what I do in my morning practice, and I tell people, if you can't win your morning, win your afternoon. And if you're not winning your afternoon, you got to win your evening, and you have to win something. But your business success and your income potential is 100% related to what is going on in your electromagnetic field, which is coming from inside the body and spreading outward. And when you start to move that energy, if you think of like a waterfall, or if you think of free flowing water. It's moving, it's creative, it stays fresh. Versus if you take a bowl of water and set it outside in the sun, and there's no movement, you get algae in there, you get bacteria and fungus and parasites. So we as human beings, we're predominantly water. We need to move. And it's more than just on the treadmill or going for a run. That's exercise. Okay. And I fully endorse exercise. In fact, people who do exercise, they're the ones you see out there being successful. But there's something else in additional layers that you can literally take your energy to such a high level where the clarity comes, the vision comes, the crazy ideas. My most magnetic and incredible business ideas have come in just like a little nudge. And it's always been when I've been in my practice or shortly thereafter or out for a walk. And when I honor that, I call them my $1 million decisions, because I'm like, who knew? Where did that idea come from? So it's a little bit of working with the body and feeling it. I always like to teach people something like, here's a 3-minute practice to change your energy when you are frustrated or angry or overwhelmed. A big thing with entrepreneurs, I think especially, is overwhelm. So many beautiful ideas, too much to do, no way to sift and sort it. And when we are overwhelmed, we cannot receive higher levels of income, because your energy field is saying, I'm already carrying too much. Don't give me any more. So those, clients or whatever your line of business is, it reads that energy and it doesn't buy. So keeping ourselves in that higher vibrational state is key to all business and personal life expansion.
So true. So true. And I love what you just said. Like, when we already have so much on our plates, the energy field, even if it's different, like even if you're full of, let's say, tasks and projects, the energy field is still full of something. So that energy of income cannot come through. The energy of new clients cannot come through. Even if it's in a different realm, it's like that overflow, or that feeling of being like you're carrying too much, like you're already carrying too much. I think that's a really important point to emphasize. But everything you just said is so beautiful. And I see that in so many of my clients as well. Like the feeling that there's something missing, there's something blocked somewhere, and they know that with a few simple things they could change it, but they don't always know what those things are. And I'm so glad that you're bringing together so many different modalities, right? Like, so many people I talk to feel like they have to go out, they have to like go to the gym every day, they have to sit down and meditate every day, they have to journal every day, they have to do breath work every day. Like, they're stacking up all the different things that they need to do, right, to achieve their goals, to feel better, to be more energized, more productive. What you're doing is you're kind of collapsing that and consolidating that into a holistic practice that checks all of the boxes and yet achieves more than any one of those boxes can alone, which is really interesting to me. Really fascinating.
It's like a synergistic, explosive, and like I said, I have more of that catalyst energy, that ignite energy, which I find entrepreneurs tend to carry, and just people in general that are out to do wonderful, amazing things. And so with that, it's like the journaling. If you saw my journal, it is like chicken scratches, bullets, but it's usually, here's my next idea. I have my genius journal, I call it. What goes in my genius journal are the ideas that come through during my practice. And then I capture it, because what happens is we get all these ideas. We're not actually meant to do it all today. It's like, this might be for next week. This might be for next year. This might be for my next lifetime, like not happening this time around. Right. But what I just love about that is with the practice, there's the clarity. And with the practices, you have this inner knowing. So you really are tapping into your right brain, your intuitive side. I think, in business school, it's highly left brain dominant, like show me the research, show me the science. And, if I had followed traditional business, I would say business coaches, like the cookie cutter approach, you need to do this, you need to be on social media, and I didn't do any of that. I created an online empire. I live rural in northern Wisconsin. And at the time I created my business, I did not have good internet. So I would literally, for my first coaching group, and everyone said, you have to have a website and you have to have good internet. I had neither. I didn't even have a website until about 2 years ago, because my energy was changing so quickly. I would have spent all my time updating. I had a multiple six-figure business and no website. And I wasn't, it was just like, how did this happen? But I remember in my first little coaching group, I had 4 incredible women 4 years ago. This past week, I just celebrated all of them because they're beautiful souls. We're still connected today. And I had to we're right in the middle of COVID, so I couldn't go anywhere, right? I drove to our local elementary school in my car, and it was summer and it was hot, and I tapped into their public Wi-Fi with my old Mac, and I did our first 12 weeks, my first 3-month program. I broadcast it from my Honda Pilot. And, I remember thinking, I'm nuts. I'm crazy. Oh my goodness. And I just had this, I felt like a big snowplow just plowing through the blocks of I can do anything. And I did not let that, imperfectionism stop me, because what I've always liked to do is show up as a professional. I was like, hey ladies, here I am in my car. The air conditioning's on. I've got sweat dripping down my back. I had a cop pull up next to me in one of my calls and say, can I help you? What are you doing? And I remember telling him, I said, I'm just over here creating my little empire. And, he went about his day, but it was like, did that really happen? And yes, that was in my not so far away history. That was part of the things we have to do. We have to do the crazy things. We have to do things anyways, and get out of the perfectionism. And, I have energy tools that I use, short practices, movement, when I get caught in perfectionism, when I get caught up in the overwhelm, when I get caught up in frustration, when I get caught up in scarcity. All of these things, I think, hit entrepreneurs. And when they hit hard. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. As all of your listeners know, it's a calling that I think more people could take on, but their ego blocks them from doing it because they go into, what if I fail? And I have never let that come in to my realm. I will always succeed. Even if it's a dead end road, I'm going to pivot that and there is going to be a success. So keeping that energy alive is what I do, when I hit my mat every single day.
Love that. I love that. That's really powerful. I think that actually gives me a name for our episode. I feel like it should be something like, from running her first live group program out of her Honda Pilot at the local elementary school to, multiple 6 figures in business and so much success, so many lives impacted. Like, that's just so
Exactly
impressive.
it. When I actually pause long enough to reflect on what I have done, and a lot of people say, hey, you have 4 kids. I also homeschool 4 kids. So I don't have an office. It's with 4 kids around me. And now they're getting, older and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, if you looked at my life and what I was attempting to do, I believe I might have been the only person, other than a few supporters, that thought it was possible. I remember getting asked, what are you thinking? What are you doing? You're going to lose your house. And I had moments of that, right? Where I'm like, we might, but I just, sometimes your back has to be against the wall, the proverbial wall, and you just figure out your path. And I realized that it was through alignment of my energy system. It's bigger than my energy system, but the magnetism, the radiance, it's my energy that will attract in the right clients. So if I am in scarcity, my clients showing up on my doorstep will reflect that back at me. Okay. So I own all of that. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. How am I showing up? And it's always this beautiful self-reflection, not in judgment, but I'm continuing to grow my own being. And that's my number one priority. I always tell my clients, my number one commitment to you is I will be doing my own inner work. And when I do that, then it allows all of us to be able to do our inner work. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful, magnetic, beautiful flowing process. And, I'm like, we need to teach this in schools. We need athletes need this, men need this, women need this, overwhelmed moms need this, children need this. I teach this work to my kids, and they are incredible little athletes themselves on a very high track. And so that mindset work, getting ourselves in the right space and getting out of fear and taking on life's challenges as little road bumps versus dead ends, right? road bumps versus seeing things as dead ends. So this work applies to everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. I love that. And I'm curious, would you want to take us through a version of this? Would you be willing to
Would love
share,
to.
like, especially, yeah, like for people who I think a lot of people struggle in what I hear them call a downward spiral. And I was thinking about
Yes.
this because I was having a conversation with a client the other day who felt like, their energy kept kind of like sinking. So they had one bad experience in their business, right? Like they had a lower revenue month, okay,
Mhm.
and then they started thinking about that and spiraling into, okay, now it's continuing. Where's the clients? Where's the money? Where's the income? And it was getting harder and harder over time for this person to pull themselves out of that and flip the script and like get out of creating that same reality because they were putting all of their attention on that being the reality. So I'm curious, is there something that you would recommend, whether it's for that situation or just to kind of combat that feeling of like overwhelm or confusion, maybe uncertainty, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not? Is my strategy off? Do I need to change
Yes.
everything? Do I need to burn my business to the ground? That's just the phrase I hear way too much. Is there something that you would share, or like maybe a simple 3 to 5 minute thing that somebody could
Yes.
engage
I,
in
w-
to
I would
just.
love I would love to share that. And I can demo it and people can do it along with me. And this is something that I use every single day as part of my practice. So I will be honest, my personal practice. So before podcast, I did a little practice today. It was about 20 minutes because my house was actually empty. So I took 20. I already won my morning this morning, but depending on if I'm speaking on a stage or speaking on a podcast or coaching my clients or running my kids around or throwing a baseball in the backyard, our energies are different and we need different energies for different times. So, the energy of overwhelm would be a different practice than the energy of I'm going on stage. I need some radiance. I need to open up my throat chakra. I need to be able to communicate what needs to come through. So there's like multiple, here's the analogy I love to use with the work I do. And I will share one of my favorites that I use. It's kind of my staple. It's a go-to. I throw it into every practice that I do every single day. It's not necessarily easy, but it gets easier. But I'm like, we can do anything for 2 or 3 minutes. But I will definitely share that so people can feel. I did it, and I did a 4-minute practice with my clients yesterday. Totally shifted everybody's energy. And I hadn't done that order lineup. It was a 2-part. But what I love for people to just know and understand is that you can switch your energy around pretty quickly. Those overwhelm blocks where you're just stuck, and you're absolutely right. You have a low income month, you're going to trip up every fear around scarcity and oh my gosh. And what it kicks in is the primal response of I have to do something. I'm not doing something right. I have to think harder. I have to market harder. I have to show up more. And then we end up going from that overwhelm into more overwhelm. And then we're going to get crickets, right? Because our energy isn't into alignment. So taking entrepreneurship with a little bit of a grain of salt. But what I would love to share is just a short practice. When I work with energy, I'm working with all the body parts. So when people get into that low income month, the scarcity mindset, the oh no, and it's continuing, the little bit of a freak out, the little bit of the panic, those are all residing as blocks in the lower part of our body. So like the navel center on down, below the belly button, kind of those lower centers. Our hips store, especially in women, we store a lot of those lacking confidence, the ability to step forward in confidence. So oftentimes those are the areas that are holding the block. So I will use like full body movements to just work those things out. But for purposes of a podcast and the screen size, and I'm not in my studio, I would love to just share a short breath work, mudra, energy clearing practice if you're up for it. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I
I'm
love this
I'm
idea.
going to just do this. And I know it's a little hard maybe to see. So I'm going to just demonstrate it. So when we work with the energy channels of the body, all of our fingers represent different things. We release a lot of energy through our outer limbs, through our feet. So what I like to do, and this is the hand position that I'm going to show you, it's simply folding your fingers down over the right here. Okay. So the finger pads down. I'm going to put my hands out like this. Okay. That is the hand position. Then I'm going to put my arms out. I know it's hard to see, but I'm out at a V. And then my arms are going like this. Okay. So that is the position. Now I can do this seated in a chair. I'm sitting in a chair now. I can do it cross-legged on a mat. I can do this standing up. I always say there's no excuses. You can do this anywhere. Okay. So that is the arm position. Okay. Now the breath on this, and the breath is what is going to be most powerful. If I could pick one breath work tool to use for the rest of my life, it would be this particular breath. I do it every single day. It's a little noisy. And so people have to overcome like, hey, I'm being noisy. Get over it. It's going to change your life. It's called breath of fire. So people who have done maybe Kundalini yoga or more advanced yoga, you will get into breath of fire, very specific breath that moves the energy from this area and it comes up and clears your blocks up and down. So whatever's going on in your energy field, it's an energy boost. Okay. So you're going to go like this. You're going to put the arms out. Now it's nostril breathing. Okay. So you're not breathing it all through your mouth. And it's going to be as you exhale, my navel, my belly pulls in. Okay. So we start slow where it's, so as I exhale out, I'm pulling my navel center in. Okay. And then the release, right? Now, usually people get like 5 cycles and they're like, oh my gosh, right? That's because we don't know how to breathe, and that's our block. Okay. So this takes practice. This is actually advanced breath. So, but you know what? You're entrepreneurs. You can do this. I went right for it. I'm like, I can do it. And so if you are pregnant or on your cycle, do not do breath of fire. But you can just do long, deep breathing instead. Okay. But if you're outside of that, give it a whirl. So you're going to go like this, and you're going to put your arms up, and you're going to go eyes closed. We are accessing the subconscious. So we are going to go ahead and begin. I will demo it. And I'm just going to talk a little bit while you continue to do it. One of the things that may happen with this is you may notice you have to cough. Those are the blocks clearing out of your throat center. So that energy is going through, that breath is moving through your entire body's meridian system and finding the blocks that are keeping you stuck. Okay. I like to recommend 3 minutes of this. So again, just stay there a little longer. We'll stay here about 2. You may find that one nostril is more open than the other nostril. That is completely normal. It also shows which hemisphere of the brain is holding the block, the left brain, the right brain, the creative side, the logical side. And you will notice that your body may get tired. The arms get sore. Those are the blocks. That is the ego just trying to stop you. And over time, it gets easy. But even me, if I'm sitting with the block and I get up there to do that, a minute in, I'm like, I'm not going to make it 3 minutes. But what I know is that's a block. So we'll just go like 20 more seconds here. Again, the motion is coming from that navel center. So it does take some time to sync the breath with the body, with the movement. You can't screw this up, but you can get better at it. And then on your next inhale, and again, if you're doing this on your own, I recommend 3 minutes, and you'll really feel that shift. You're going to inhale. You're going to bring the fingertips together up over top. You're going to inhale, hold your breath, and you're going to spread your fingers out like that. You're going to hold it. Hold the breath. Just feel it coming all the way to the top. And then exhale. You're going to slowly just bring the arms down. I have done this with athletic teams. I've done this with a lot of people. I weave it in with 3 or 4 other quick tools. And all of a sudden you feel like a new person. I had one lady recently say to me, she's like, Natalie, I don't know what it is you do, but if I could just capsule up this feeling and put it in a bottle, it's worth $1 million. And I'm like, that's an interesting way. And it is, it absolutely is. But here's the beauty. No one needs me to heal them or clear them. We do this ourselves. And I think that's the key, that our ability to clear our own blocks on the spot and not wait for the mentor, it might be the middle of the night, but we need to be able to recognize, have that awareness of when we're getting blocked and say, what's going on here? Let me just clear this. Oftentimes, people will do a lot of like the journaling and reflecting. I feel like we go too much into the past. And by focusing our energy there, we just kind of keep it lingering. I'm always like, let's just clear it. Whatever it is, doesn't matter as much as me feeling better. And people say, how long do I do it for? Until you feel the shift. You will know by how you feel. And it is a quick shift, and it is a quick energy shift. And so I have practices that range from 3 minutes, 7 minutes, 11 minutes. I've got 18-minute, 24. There's no excuses, because there's always something we can use in our busy days.
Love that. That was really powerful. That was really, really powerful. And what I love about it is, like you said, oh, it's going to be a little bit difficult. I don't think it was that hard. It wasn't hard. It was unique, right? It's different from like going to a yoga class and doing, whatever they're telling you to do, or going to, Pilates, or laying down for 10 minutes to take a nap, right? But what I loved about it is it felt opening, like I felt it in my body. And I think you're right. Like, people get so deep into like journaling and affirmations and talking to a coach and going to therapy. And I think all of that has value. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, a lot of it is up here, right? All of that is working up here in the mind and with the thoughts, which of course is important. But what about the body, right? All of that comes from and is stored in the body. And if you can just break through it, blast through it in the physiology, then you're free of it. You don't have to analyze it. You can just let it go.
Right. And I've done a lot of mindset work, and I love mindset work, but I'm like, you know what? Mindset work and getting yourself into that higher vibrational flow state just happens when you clear the blocks in the body. The body is telling us, we always say, what do you hear a lot of people say? Oh, my shoulders are tight. I'm tense. My hip is bad. My knee is bad. It is amazing with some of my 20-minute longer practices that I have. People will tell me, and I say, this is just a side effect bonus. I know what's going on in the body, but you're going to live longer with this work. But you also, some of these ailments in the physical end of things, what I have found is people will report back and say, it's gone. I've been seeing a chiropractor and PT and acupuncturist and doing all the things and clearing the energy around it for years and years and years, and I have no more pain. What was it that I just did? And I'm like, it was an energetic block that you had been sitting there for years. And in time, not necessarily one practice, but oftentimes within 3 weeks or less than that, if people have anything like that, and I never claim, obviously it doesn't heal, but when we open up our energy system, our body does heal itself. So essentially I tell them, you healed yourself. That was an energetic block. And then they're like, what other blocks do I have in my body? I say, just keep going. You'll know, because people lose weight, or people feel lighter. It's you can see it in their step. You can see it in their face. You can see it in their constitution. And that's, people that start doing just a little bit of this, their friends, their families say, you look different. Like, what are you doing? What are you on? And it's really a shift in their energy field. And people pick up on that. Whether they know anything about energy fields or not, they pick up. We pick up on the vibes and the energy of other people. And we're either magnetic, or if we're out there overwhelmed and exhausted, we will attract in overwhelmed and exhausted people that have no energy to invest in us. So I think it's important for us to realize how I feel in this moment, in my body and in my emotional state, is the message I'm sending out to attract in. And when we start owning that, we can very quickly raise that awareness. And I think the second part of that is, well, how do I get to feeling really, really good? And that's how I've used this work. And I know it's been a key driver in my life and my business, and not just my business. It ripples to my husband, my kids, everyone. They say, we see life differently because you're doing your inner work, Mom. And I'm like, okay, it's time for you to start doing it too, but it's a ripple effect. And so if you have employees or staff, your inner work spreads to them, whether they know it or not. It will raise the collective consciousness like nothing ever I've seen.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really powerful. Really powerful. So like in your work, do you have like programs? Do people like take courses with you, or do you work one-on-one? Like, how can people who are listening right now and saying, I want what she's got, I want to order the same thing off the menu. How do they get in touch with you and work with you to actually learn everything that you have to offer?
Yes. So I have tried to keep my business model simple. I love to course create. I love to speak. I love to do all the things, but I also realize I need to have a very streamlined message. So I actually have a lot of free stuff. The best place to find it, because it's stored as a library of trainings, is in my private Facebook group. And from there, I have a website, of course. What I do besides the speaking is I have a coaching program, but I have a couple other things that involve the movement that are out there, very reasonable prices. Like anyone can access those if people are really serious. I have a 20-minute Win Your Life morning practice. It's called Catalyst. I created it on a whim, and I told myself, this was last fall, if I could find 20 women that would do this for 40 days in a row, and I have a journal, like just to like check done, check done. If I could find 20 entrepreneurial minded, high achieving women led from the soul do this, that would be incredible. And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm going to find 20 that'll do it 40 days in a row. And I actually have had over 75 women do it. Now, this is without promoting it. This is just through word of mouth. I took it offline because it was getting a little too big. Like I couldn't manage the emails. I couldn't manage the breakthroughs. But I kind of have it out there quietly if people look hard enough. But I'm always, if someone is in alignment for that, I definitely share that with them. I do meet with people one-on-one if they're really serious about learning this work at a deeper level. But yes, I'm accessible. I do love to give a lot away for free. And at the same time, a lot of the magic stuff, I have something I would say for almost everyone who's ready to do it. This work can turn off a lot of people in terms of the ego, because we think is it so simple? And yeah, right. It's just exercise. And yes, it's just exercise if you do it 2 or 3 times a week. But this is a daily and in your moment practice before you launch, before you go on a podcast, before you sit down to write your book, understanding what energy you need to be creative versus to take charge and take action versus the energy you need when you got to go meet with your CPA for the year, right? Like all of those represent different energies. And is your energy ready for what you have to do on your plate? So it's a beautiful process. But yes, people can check me out online.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll definitely put the link to your site in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you. And that program sounds amazing, right? That sounds absolutely incredible. So I'm sure people will want to hop into that. So thank you so much for sharing this with us and actually taking us through one of your practices that anybody can implement right here, right now. Like those of you listening, go do that exercise, do your 3 minutes of that exercise. Like it's really powerful stuff. And these are simple techniques that you can introduce to your day that make all the difference in the world. Like it's so funny how sometimes the smallest things, 3 minutes out of your day, literally 3 minutes, can change your entire week, your entire month, and your entire year. So that ripple effect is huge.
It is. And I always say to all entrepreneurs, in the doing of less, we can create so much more. And this is spoken from me, who your classic overachiever, doing it all, And I realized early on, I don't have to do it all. And when I'm in a flow state, I'm doing a lot less, but the creation is a lot more, because when we're in flow, miracles, mini miracles, big miracles can actually just show up. And that's where it's like, I spend that little bit of time. The return on investment from my morning practice is millions of dollars return on investment. And that's what I try to communicate to people. If we don't carve out the time for us, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's 20 minutes, whether it's 3 minutes, if we don't do that, we are putting a really big cap on our potential to step into what we came to the earth to do and be of service for others. So remembering that, and I always say, the more time I spend on me, the bigger I can serve. The more time I spend on me, and I can do that. I can do that with 4 kids. And I'm like, if I can do that with what I have going on in my back end life, anybody can do it. So I just want to encourage all of your listeners, to step out boldly and courageously. And if you're not winning your mornings, you need to be winning your mornings, and it will change your life. And if you are already winning your mornings and you're still stuck, then you've got to switch up how you win your mornings, right? Then there's still a block that is not being addressed. So encouraging you to just step into that change, step into trying something new, overcome the ego, stick with something. It's consistency over time. So just want to encourage all of you out there to step boldly into your next level.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's so motivational and so inspirational. And I'm sure everybody listening just absolutely loved this episode. So really appreciate you taking the time. I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else learned a lot. And you've been absolutely wonderful to have on the show. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allie. Appreciate it.